red one's better. So it homes in on its enemy.
The green's just supposed to participate as a whole for a show.
That's why you're losing.
Alright boys.
Hi Chris.
Hi Chris, how you doing?
I've got a question for you.
Oh, I'll put it on mute.
I've got a good question for you two. Judge, what is language to you?
That's a very good question.
Great teaser.
Very hard to put my finger on.
Externally, it's the means of communication that...
I'd say it's a complex form of communication.
A form of communication.
A form of communicating with other people.
But internally it can be the language of thought.
Some people identify language as speech, but I want to say that they're not exactly the same thing. The question of whether you can think independently of your language or whether you are in the prison house of your own particular language, which I don't believe is the case, but many people do think that's the case.
It has something to do with communication, but it has a lot of other things in it also. Language is like a species, so it doesn't really exist in a way. It's just a way of talking about a whole bunch of individuals that can sort of talk to each other and influence each other.
It conveys your experience and the level of your humanity, really.
The meaning of language to me basically is to make more friends and hang out and try to get my degree. Probably, yeah.
Language means very much some intrinsic or it contains, if you like, some intrinsic qualities to the person.
Well, language is complicated and it comes from human beings' mind, and through communications it works on the society, and so I think it's kind of the communication between human and the society.
Language is an identity, a culture, everything.
Everybody feels, and yeah, it's part of my personality, that's the way I talk, that is my language or my dialect, that is the way I sound, that is me.
Today is Tiwasday. Yeah. Today is Tiwasday ac yesterday was Monday. Yeah. Shinth Seosuna today? No.
I think of language as very different from languages. Language is something in the brain and can differ slightly from individual to individual. Languages are something that sort of emerges from many different speakers.
Because you haven't said language would suggest that which is universal across all languages.
Nowadays, English has become the world language that people can share to talk each other.
Sometimes when I'm just on the metro or anything, I just, kind of glimpse a person, speaking, oh, that person is from that place, and, from America.
So you've got the difference between, say, English and Spanish, and then within English you've got the difference between good English and bad English.
Now there's a strong feeling, or a lot of people have the feeling, that there's good English and there's sloppy English. So that, in a way, is something that slows down change, because there's such a model, that's correct English, everybody is striving to speak and write in accordance with that model.
When we study language change, we want to have people of different ages. So we want someone who is in their 20s, someone in their 40s, sorry guys, I apologize, someone who is about 60, and someone who is about 80, okay? We develop, we acquire patterns of linguistic coloration up to 20, and then we stabilize. So Emma is speaking today, when she's 40, like people spoke 20 years ago, so she represents language as it was spoken in 92. So each of them represents a different time slice in language change.
After the Norman conquest in 1066, there was something that happened to the language which seems to have really changed it. That whole mix of people who were native to England, invaders, hostile invaders from France, from Normandy, and also these recent settlers from Scandinavia. And how does it relate to all these speakers of English at the time, especially the way they learned English as young children, for whom, for many of them, English would not have been the first language.
If you think about infants, they can't tie their shoelaces, they can't take care of themselves, and yet they're able to acquire this complex cognitive system that language is. How do they do it?
You have something up here which enables you to speak and understand a language.
Language is actually something very physical, because we know now where it happens, but language is also something that happens between brains, that is in a society. So it really matters a lot, you know, how many languages you speak, what languages they are.
Many children across the world acquire more than one language. There's children bilingual and trilingual and so forth. So, and they do not get confused by, you know, being exposed to more than one language. Recent research indicates that children who grow up bilingual or so, bilingual or trilingual, in fact, may have certain cognitive benefits. If you think of an adult trying to acquire a foreign language, it's a huge, massive endeavor.
To learn a second language, well, to shift into another personality, so that, yeah, okay, you can adopt that other new language as being also part of you. So in that respect, perhaps it is perhaps a bit easier for people if they're not so good language learners, because that means, yeah, well, perhaps they have a more stable personality, actually.
What makes somebody non-native when they're speaking English and their native language is Arabic?
Well, sometimes, you know, when they're speaking, they kind of flip consonants and these things. And,
oh, really?
Yeah,
so they metaphysize?
Metaphysize, yes.
Oh.
They add, you know, insert
vowels.
Consonant vowels,
yeah.
These things. And sometimes they say, instead of Tesco, a Tesco. And although that's...
A Tesco?
A Tesco, yeah, because...
Tesco, a Tesco. That's Tesco, really interesting.
And they have to add something, you know, kind of Arabicize it when they're speaking.
Ah, right.
In my dialect, or in Standard Arabic, we have words like, for example, galb or witr, but in dialect, we epithesize there, so we have galib instead of galb, and witr instead of witr. So when we learn English, people tend to epithesize the same way. So for example, in a word like next, they say nexit.
If we taught Arabic at Newcastle, how should we teach it?
Oh, I think it should be like task-based learning, where students are supposed to do a task, complete it, and use the Arabic in order to complete it. It's not going to be computers anymore. It's going to be more like the iPads, the mobile learning, what they call now mobile learning, that is going to take over. Most of the Bengalis and Urdu, they speak, they don't speak, they read in Arabic because they read the Quran for their religious purposes. So Arabic is of a much priority than the other languages in terms of, in this sense, rather than any other sense.
I kind of think that might be one of the lines of research that people are going to start pursuing, which is looking at the effect of literacy on adult second language acquisition.
What are you currently researching at the moment?
I'm currently working on a couple things in medieval Spanish, actually, because my interest is theoretical linguistics, so I kind of go wherever the theory takes me. I don't specifically work on English necessarily.
And what do you find most exciting about your research?
Oh, I think it's the kind of problem-solving aspect of it. That is to say, you come across a problem and you think, well, what is going on here? You know, so you find something strange, you're kind of reading along, and you see something, well, I've never seen that before. Why is it doing that? And it's just that desire to just figure out what's going on.
What I'm working on at the moment is a project culminating in a book having to do with mathematical analysis of large collections of natural language text. This involves a lot of computation, a lot of mathematics, and is related to fields in computer science like information retrieval and data mining. Underlying all the stuff that linguistics and language students learn is a very solid core of mathematics, as there's a solid core of mathematics in all science.
I'm working on the employability of native and non-native English teachers of English, and whether having an accent or coming from a certain nationality or certain ethnic background affects the employment of the teachers. I found that not only the native speaker criteria is important, but also the accent of the teacher and nationality as well. If Saudi program administrators find these to be important as hiring criteria, then they would perceive non-native speaker applicants as less qualified.
I have recently seen some ads about this topic in Saudi Arabia, and the majority of ads they asked for native speakers only.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah, it's built on the assumption that all native speakers are good teachers by default, and this is wrong. I'm trying to show that qualification should come first.
A couple of years ago, one of our undergraduate student teams wrote this book. These are immigrant adults who are learning to read for the first time, but in a second language. When they read a sentence like Dan sells fish, they're not looking at third person singular s, they're ignoring it. And we have evidence that they actually do ignore the agreement morphology and just read Dan sell fish. What we're also interested in is looking at whether there is a difference between learners who start learning a second language being fully literate in their native language versus those who aren't literate at all in their native language, and whether they process input differently. This is a pretty new area of investigation, and I'm pursuing it with a couple other people at other universities.